Hello there, and welcome back to the And Also podcast. I'm your host, Madison, and this podcast is all about grief, mental health, and my journey to becoming a funeral director. So all things death, all things dark, all things grief. If you've lost a loved one, you have found a place here to feel heard, to share stories, to hear stories, and yeah, welcome back to another episode. I'm so happy you're here. So in today's episode, we're returning to our roots. We're talking about a grief story. I have a guest coming on. Her name is Faith, and she lost her mother to cancer. It was a very quick, intense battle. And I don't know too much of her story going into this interview, so it'll be interesting to learn about what she experienced with the death of her mother. I know that they were very close. They were best friends. So a loss like this is absolutely life-changing. So I'm really excited to hear her story today. But of course, before we get into the interview, we have our drink of the day. I cannot even tell you how excited I am to try this drink. Obviously, I love Poppy. The last time we did a drink on the show, it was also Poppy. Sorry. I love Poppy. And this is a flavor that I have seen all over social media, but have never been able to get my hands on and try. It's the wild berry flavor. First of all, the color, the can, the blue, the purple, love it, living for it, okay? Let's crack this open and give the wild berry Poppy a try. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. It smells so good. You guys, this is exactly what I needed. This is about to be a very niche memory. So if you're born in the 90s or the early 2000s, you might remember this. Do you remember the Tricks Are for Kids yogurts? They were like blue and pink, like swirl. That is exactly what this tastes like, just like carbonated edition. So if you're craving the 90s nostalgia of Tricks Are for Kids yogurt, there it is. That's the adult version. I just love Poppy. It's so good. You know, I'm trying to get my prebiotics up because my skin has been a wreck the past few months, and you know, they say pre and probiotics help. So Poppy, save me, please. All right, guys, so without further ado, let's get into today's interview. I'm so excited to share another story of grief. I am so thankful for this platform and the space to talk about such intense and difficult things, but still have community and support for one another. So thank you for coming along this journey. Thank you for listening to other people's stories and reflecting and sharing and just being so open and welcoming to all of the guests. And yeah, let's get into today's interview. All right, so I'm here with Faith. We kind of go way back. We used to work together when I was at Sephora. And yeah, just you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I have a story that I want to share. And here we are.
I know. What was that? Maybe 8 years
It
ago
had
now?
to be, seriously.
And maybe even 10. But it was just so exciting to see you on this platform and see you, you know, start from Sephora, go through like the whole fashion industry, and then now bring something to light that needs to be talked about. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you. That means so much, because I think, you know, kind of like we were saying before we started recording, just this isn't something that's talked about enough. It's an industry that does, you know, like death needs a lot of modernizing. I feel like we're operating in the old times. It's cool to be able to talk about this stuff and have people be like, oh, this is really needed. Do you want to share a bit about your mom and her story and just kind of why we're here today?
Yeah. So yeah, just like you said, just the modernization of, I guess, grief in general, right? So like what my experience was. So yeah, March 2022, life kind of got flipped upside down, to say the least. So my light, my heart, the reason that I woke up in the morning, my beautiful, incredible mom at 66 years old decided to drive herself to urgent care and what she thought was just a basic urinary tract infection, to be honest. She just, you know, had some regular pain. She dealt with a lot of chronic pain throughout her life. And unfortunately, they found a huge abdominal mass. So very unexpected. They called me when they were at the urgent care office, and she actually had a great practitioner there that, you know, took it very, very seriously and expedited everything and said, you know, this looks very serious. This looks like it could be a cancerous mass. Still at that point, we were hopeful. We're like, okay, this is serious, but we didn't want to get out of hand.
You don't want to jump to conclusions.
Yeah,
and
we didn't
spiral.
want to panic.
Right.
And again, my mom wasn't, you know, she had health issues, you know, in the past and everything. So she was used to not getting the best news, but when she said cancerous, you know, that always sparks some, you know, that sparks a little bit of panic. So when she got the full MRI scan, they did see that it was uterine cancer, and it was in the uterine lining, the wall lining of her uterus, which is pretty impossible to do any kind of targeted radiation for. And it had metastasized all over her body, unfortunately. At that point, she had to make the decision if she was going to get chemotherapy or not. She was somebody who was just extremely driven to live a quality of life instead of a quantity of life. So at that point, after all the testing, and we, you know, went to multiple doctors and got multiple different opinions from different people, they all said the same thing after, you know, we saw that it had metastasized. So they told her it was like a 3 to 6 months diagnosis of, you know, terminal illness. And so from that point, it really just put everything into, it was like a movie, honestly. We had to just change everything, our way of living. I began to live in this state of limbo. I could only describe it really as life being from in color to black and white very, very quickly. It went from all the things that I had planned for my life or thought that could be a possibility, because it was me and my mom growing up. She was a single mother. We had done everything together. She filled probably every role in my life that I could possibly imagine. She was like my best friend, my confidant, she was everything. So it encapsulated one whole lifetime. It was like her lifetime, my lifetime, you know, my sisters, everybody. And it's like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? But then also like, what does the future hold for myself and, you know, my sisters and everything now?
It's like a balance of trying to live in the moment.
Yes.
And soak in every second, create new memories and do what you can with that time that you have.
Yes.
And then also like looking back on the past and just like remembering your entire life with her, and then looking to the future and being like, is there a future? Like, what does this even look like?
Exactly.
Because, like you said, everything you imagine for yourself is just different. Like, you always see that person there with you.
Yeah.
And now you're like forced to face the reality that they're not going to be.
Yeah. It's like everything's on hyperdrive. It's every single thing went into just this high gear of, you know, laying there and seeing everything on the walls. Like, you know, she's picking out things that she wants and doesn't want. And at 29, it was like, I'm going through this at 29. I want to be going, you know, through this.
Yeah. Can I go through this at like 50 or 60, please?
50 or 60.
Can my mom just live forever, actually?
Yeah. And I knew that, I mean, she had me at 38. So she had me later in life. So I always knew that I wouldn't have her as long as I would like to have her. But I would never expect, I mean, in life, you never... You always want more time.
You always want more time. And then you look back on all the little things you didn't do and you're like, how could I have not seen this coming?
Exactly.
Like, it's such a hard thing. Yeah. Like, I can't even imagine what it feels like to also like watch your loved one just completely change. Like, you go from, you know, being able to call your mom and be like, hey, let's go here, let's go there, to now your mom's on hospice.
Yes.
And that change itself is huge.
Yeah.
Let alone everything else going on. So was she in hospice like at the hospital, or was she at home and they were coming to your house? Like, how did that work?
So it was very quick. And the thing with, you know, cancer too, is that everything is just on a day-to-day, even hour-to-hour basis, because your body's just breaking down. So that was something that was just completely unexpected for me too, because it could be a few hours of positive, you know, we can watch a movie together and she's smiling and happy, and then, you know, she's sleeping for, you know, a 12-hour stretch or not able to get up to go to the bathroom herself or things. So the unexpected nature of how the body reacts to different medications and the muscle mass just deteriorates so quickly. You see the muscle, within, the face and the arms and everything, it just sags because you're not getting as much mobility. That, all those shocking things from the start is you just can't expect any of those things to happen. But she had in-home hospice to start. And then when she passed, she had inpatient hospice. Okay. And they were really incredible in day one coming in saying, I remember them being like, we're not here to help you die. We're here to help you live.
Wow.
And that was just a statement that like, I will never, ever, ever take that for granted, because at that point when hospice had come in, she was feeling so defeated with everybody within the healthcare industry saying, there's nothing else we could do, like this is it, like this is.
And then like, if you don't want to do chemo.
Yeah, and she was just such a hopeful person. It's like, nobody's going to tell me this is my timeline. If this is my timeline, I've seen miracles happen. I'm gonna ride this out until I can ride it out.
Of it while I can.
Yeah. She was just unbelievably positive to a degree where it's like, holy, now looking back at it. Yeah, again, when hospice came in, they were just so incredible. I remember one of the nurses came and had to, change her catheter and just hopped right on the bed, be like, this isn't a big deal. Let's come on, I do this every day. This is fine. Like, come on, Bonnie, like this is good. And then we had somebody come in and sing, and he was just like, we're gonna make you feel uplifted today. So that is like a misconception of hospice. Is like, okay, they're going to come in doom and gloom and just like,
so you're dying. Yeah. Here's the steps.
Right. And it was just really like the beacon of, hope as much as you could get at the time that we really needed, because it was just a navigation of, how many doctors can we call? How many, surgeons and things that can we possibly, try to navigate on our own at this point. So I'm just eternally grateful for the services they provided.
Yeah,
truly.
It's amazing because, at funerals, we service a lot of people who are on hospice care. Like a lot of the people we get are either older or cancer situations. And every single time we have a service, the hospice nurses always come for the patients. And they're just like, so like, you could see how grateful the family is for them and how much that service impacts those last few months. And like you were saying before, like, it's 3 to 6 months. Either we can pretend like we're going to get 5 more years, or we can say, hey, we have 3 to 6 months. What are we doing to make this the best 3 to 6 months we have? That's
kind of incredible. Like that, that long, it's not really longevity, but like looking forward and saying, okay, either giving the options. It's like the more options that you can give at, any end of life, it brings such a human aspect back into the dying process.
Yeah, because it does give a sense of control. Having choice in the things that we can control it's huge. It's life-changing.
It really is.
Like, changes the course of how the grief unfolds going forward. So do you want to talk about how did you get the news? Were you there? How did all of that kind of unfold?
At the very, very end, when, we knew that it was going to be like 24 hours, I had a very blunt conversation again. My mom was very realistic about death. She tried to prep me for it as much as she possibly could, because she knew that I had no experience with it. And she just had so much experience throughout her life. She unfortunately had the passing of a child. She, had her stepfather pass. She had multiple friends pass away. So I could see that she knew how scared that I was. So
that's really, not to cut you off, but that's like such an intense thing, is now you know grief.
Yes.
And now when your friends go through it or they're anticipating a death, it's such a different, like, you just want to do anything you can to protect them and prepare them and be like, hey, you can get through this, even if it feels like you can't. But for her to like try to give that to you is like, now we know how that feels.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's looking back on it, now it was just such a time where there's so many transitions going on simultaneously because you're talking to the funeral homes, you're trying to get all the paperwork finalized, all these
the payments, the hospital,
all
the
of
hospice,
it. There's just no way to expect it as much as you could expect it. And even though they did give her 6 to 9 months. She passed in 3 because she ended up, getting COVID, which, exasperated and expedited everything even more. But going back to what you had said before, one of my friends is dealing with her father going through a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And now I just want to, again, just do everything.
Let me take you in.
Yeah. Like
I can teach you.
Yeah. And before it's so unbelievable how I'd be like, like best wishes, I think.
Yeah, condolences.
Thoughts
and prayers.
Yes. Thoughts and prayers. And I'll send you a cookie or something.
Right.
And now
Flowers.
It's just like the things that you say are so unbelievably different. And of course, I wouldn't have ever wanted to go through this as young as I did. But I also give a lot of gratitude to being able to be that person for some.
Yes, it's like, I don't want to find the silver linings, but if I have to, like, here we are. I would do anything to have my mom back. Literally anything. I would become the old version of myself. I don't care. But since that's not an option, I guess we'll find the good things about this and use them to help other people. And
but going back to your question, sorry, I'm like jumping around to so
okay.
many different
there's
things.
so much to talk about with
There's
this.
so much to cover, but I was, when we knew that there was like a 24 to 48 hour window, I had asked her, I was like, I don't think that I'll be able to be in the room. And are you okay with that? Do you want me to be in the room is really how I posed the question, because I had never seen death before. I don't even know, to be honest, if I've been to a funeral. Like
really?
Yeah, to be honest, I was like, I don't know if I can see that. And I asked her, I'm like, how do you feel about that? And she's like, Faith, I do not want you to remember me as that. I don't want you to see me as that. I would never think of you any differently. And please do what you're comfortable with. Yeah. So that's why with like expectant grief, being so transparent with those conversations is just unbelievably important.
It's life-changing.
Because otherwise you have all those what ifs. I just have 0 what ifs in my mind that even though I wasn't in the room and I wasn't there, I knew how I wanted to say goodbye. And that's how I wanted it to be. I didn't want to remember her like in any other way than how it was.
I love that you have that.
Yeah.
I love that you have that. That's such a gift. And how was it like walking out of that room for the last time, like knowing, you weren't going to see her again?
It was just surreal. It was truly, truly surreal. But I didn't, and it's weird to say, but because we were so unbelievably close, I feel like I left her physically, but like she is just truly, I know that she is always with me, like in non-physical form. I feel like we only know so much in this human realm. Yes. and she stayed with me and is always with me, even though she's not like physically here anymore. And I knew like when I closed the door that it ended a part of not only her life, but like also my life too. It was like, it closed the door on a huge chapter of my life, because after my life changed completely too. I mean, my life changed, my sister's lives changed, the way that I function on a day-to-day basis in talking to, she was somebody I talked to 3 to 4 times a day.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And this is the type of grief that there's a before and after.
Yes.
You before just going about your life like, life is so fun and great.
Right.
And now there's this version of you. You can never unknow the things your perspective can never go back to what it was.
Exactly.
And like we were saying before, there's such an awfulness to that that you have to sit with, this sinking, empty, disgusting feeling.
Yes.
But there's also this just new perspective on the world. Like you can connect with people in a way you've never been able to before.
Yes.
Like imagine having this conversation before. It just like wouldn't have happened. And then it's, we could go on about this forever, but then you go back and forth of like, yeah, well, my mom's still not here. And so I don't really want to be having these conversations.
Yeah.
But then you're like, here I am.
Yeah.
Reality. You know, like I talk about all the time, it's literally, and also it's like, life can be shitty and this reality is awful and it sucks. And I hate that this is my life. And also I can find the joy and the beauty and the good in it because I literally have to.
Exactly.
It's both exist.
Yeah, it does. And that's a perfect way to describe it. It's a perfect name for the podcast because it is. And also like, then it's the after portion of it where it's like, I remember when you were asking about when, you know, I first got the call, you know, when she passed away and the first person I wanted to call was her. I was like,
Mom, you're not going to believe what happened.
Mom, you passed away. Like I wanted to call. I just could not believe
I've never heard somebody say this before.
Really?
And I have that same exact experience.
Really?
I've just never, I feel like a freak when I say that.
Really?
Because like when I found out Regis passed, I literally called him.
Yeah.
I actually called him. I'm like, hey, so like, you died.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That's kind of rude.
Yeah.
Kind of weird. And like, can you call me back? Like, seriously? And I've done that with every death I've experienced.
Yeah.
Let me just call my mom.
Yeah,
let
me call her and ask how I navigate this. And then I was just like, oh, wow, I can't. This is.
And that's when it hits you.
That's when it hits you.
Mentally prepare all you want.
Yep.
But it's that moment when you're like, I need my mom.
Yeah.
And she's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, 3 years later, I'm making a pot roast and you don't know what, you know, temperature to put it on. It's like, oh, you know, it's
exactly.
And that's when grief hits really,
it's
you know,
those really quiet, alone moments. So, you know, people always expect the hardest and worst days to be those anniversaries and like her birthday, the death anniversary. But when it really hits is like you said, when you're trying to do something, it's like, this is the person I need and I literally can't reach them. And that could happen anytime, any day. You expect to feel like shit on Christmas. You expect to feel like shit on your birthday, on your mom's birthday. People reach out to you. You have that in place, but it's those quiet moments when there's
there's no telling what's going to trigger. Like you're in a store and you hear a song.
It's always the song where the smells. Like,
it's always like the sensory things that really trigger it. The unexpected part. And I didn't even realize that because I just jumped into grief counseling right after because I'm just like a fix it kind of person. I'm like, all right, I have a problem, got to get a solution. I'm going to jump into grief counseling. And the issue with that is it's like, okay, Thursday at 4, every Thursday at 4, we're going to talk about it. It's like, okay, but I don't know.Maybe I'm having a really great
Tuesday at 6.
Yeah. What if I'm having a really great
talk about
day?
It on Thursday.
Yeah.
I hated grief counseling.
Yeah.
I hated it so much. It actually pissed me off. Like,
me too.
Because I'm like, okay, you're literally telling me all this shit I already know.
Yes.
And you're just reiterating my feelings.
Yeah.
And this is not to say, like, don't get grief counseling. If it works for you, it works for you.
Right. If it works for you, that's great.
But for me, it was like, I was holding so much. And how could anyone possibly understand all these little nuances of, like, the pain and the questions and the feelings? Like, you're saying to me, like, oh, well, you know, it comes in waves. Sometimes you'll be happy. Sometimes you'll be sad. No shit. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm telling you this. So what? Can you do something about it?
Right.
And you slowly realize the only solution is for that person to not be dead. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, well, this sucks.
Yeah. You get off the call. You're like, okay, what are you doing to remember them? What are you doing to keep their spirits alive? It's like, okay, so this is what I do, this is what I do. Okay, good. Okay, so what did they like to do? This is, you know, she loved Stevie Nicks and she loved to dance and do, you know, and whatever. And okay, great. And then you get off
so I learned nothing.
Yeah. Okay, so, that's wonderful. And then I tried a group counseling session, which made it.
Oh my God.
That was even worse.
That was bad.
Because then what happens? You're an empath and
you're taking on all these stories and you're going to bed at night.
Yes.
Like John and his dead wife.
Yeah. Mine's nothing. I lost my mom, which is absolutely horrible. But here, this person lost their mom, their brother, and their dog within a 5-year time
Seriously,
span.
And then you're like, awesome. So now I feel like shit.
Yeah. So I'm just being over dramatic. So
it's the hardest
horrible
thing ever. My cope was like, I just need to survive every day.
Same.
Because every single day I actually don't want to be alive.
Same. Yep.
So how do I get from Monday to Tuesday?
Yeah.
And for me, it was also like a huge overcorrection when I was in grief therapy of like, you need to like do things to honor him. And then now every single day I have these almost like obsessive rituals of like, if I don't do this, that means he's going to die again. And I like can't. And I would get so obsessive, like at 7:17 every morning and night, I would have to have a moment of silence. And it became so I was so righteous about all these things I had to do to honor him.
Yes.
I was forgetting to live my own life.
Right. And then you think you aren't doing enough. It's like,
Seriously.
she was just such, an incredible person.
It could never be enough. I owe her everything.
Yeah. Her poetry's, is all over my walls, and I have, all of her jewelry on every day, and I'm wearing all her stuff, and I'm doing, I have all of her things surrounding every facet of my life, and it's not enough, and it's still not bringing her back. And it's, it's like, it's never enough.
Never enough. Ever. And you will keep going.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to like get out of that and just realize like maybe it's just enough for me to talk about them still. It doesn't have to be this like grandiose thing. And like, you want to resolve it. You want to find the thing that's going to help. You just don't.
Right. And then the thing to help like long term and honor them, but like also what the whole thing of like leaving their legacy behind. It's like, what would they want? And that spirals a whole nother area.
Seriously. Seriously. It's an ongoing cycle.
Yeah.
And there are ways to balance everything.
Definitely.
But it's like learning how to ride a bike.
Exactly.
You just have to try things and be okay with letting things go and just keep pushing. Like literally for me, the only thing that kept me alive, honestly, because people ask me all the time, like, how did you do that? You're so strong. I'm like, actually, I'm not.
Yeah.
I literally was just like, well, all I can do today is drink my cup of coffee. That'll get me out of bed.
Right.
Coffee is the thing that kept me actually alive. And I tell people that and they're like, oh, well, that doesn't take away my fear of this happening. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I just needed to survive. Like, I don't have a magical answer for you of how you can go through the worst thing of your life and be okay. Like, I just literally showed up here. Like, I don't know how I did it.
And sometimes it's the most simple thing. It really is. It's just the most simple. Maybe it's not talking about it like in a counseling session, but really it is something as simple as a cup of coffee. Like for me, like it was getting up and going to like a dance class and doing somatic dancing and moving my body, because I couldn't talk about it anymore, because if I talked about it, it was just like I was just sitting there and thinking about it and thinking about it, and I'm just like, it was getting stuck. And it gets physically stuck within your body, so I just needed to just like move it outside of myself and just like let it out and like sweat it out and just like just get it out of my body. And
because there's like so much you can say, especially to people who don't understand, people who've never been through grief. They're like, oh, like my grandma died when I was 12, so like I get it. I'm like, this is fucking different. Like, this is not grandma dying when she's 90. You know, this shouldn't have happened.
Exactly. Period. And if it's somebody that was your whole world,
your
and
whole life,
that is such a different conversation than it was, you know, if it's somebody that you weren't as close to. I mean, grief is hard no matter what, but when it's somebody that like truly encompasses your entire life of your day to day, and you have to truly find yourself again, that is just such a different conversation in grief than it is with, you know, a passing of, I won't say just a passing, but a passing of somebody that you're not as close with, because it's
different. And it's not to say that grief isn't valid and real. Like, it's like now I look back on my entire life and it's just different, because it's someone I grew up with, was best friends with, like every single memory, every life experience was with this person. So you look back and your life is just painted a different color. It's every memory is just kind of stained in a way. And it's just different. It's not to say they're not good memories, but it's like, oh yeah, like I went to prom with Regis and it was great and he's dead. You know, it's like this add-on to every single sentence.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that lives with you lifelong, and it changes your future. It changes the way that you look at everything. From the moment that my mom passed, I went from I have all the time in the world to I have zero time. I ended,
it's all borrowed time.
Yeah,
at
it's
this
all
point.
it's
Yeah,
all
that's how I
borrowed
feel.
time. Yeah, I ended a 7-year relationship that was, wasn't serving me. I changed people, places, and things. Everything became under a microscope. If what I thought my superhero mom that would live forever in my very naive mind could go, it's just time is of the essence, and it's like
right in your face.
Yeah. You don't have time to be unhappy. Nobody has time to be unhappy, and you have to live out your true life the way that you want to. Otherwise, you're just living under false pretenses, essentially.
Seriously. And people always say to me, like, oh, you have the rest of your life. I'm like, wait, the rest of my life could be today.
Right.
Like, how do I know?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get it done because I can't be waiting. There's no such thing as waiting. For what? Who knows? Which kind of brings me to the funeral experience. Mostly because, part of why I work in the funeral industry and why I'm becoming a funeral director is it's a way of like being very upfront with death and seeing it every day, and celebrating life, and just, every day I go into work, I'm like reminded of life and how short it really is.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your funeral experience and what that was like for your family and what you decided to do. And, did you feel like you had choice? Did you feel like all the options were laid out? Were you shocked? Did you know what you were getting into? All of it.
I wish I could have had a little clone of you back then.
Right. I know. I was thinking that this whole time. I was like, oh, I wish this would have been different.
Yeah. So the funeral, we're a very non-traditional family. Just to start out I just want to say that all of us, I guess across the board, and we have a very small family too.
Yeah.
We just always talked about like the importance of talking about living instead of the end of like the death process, or being remembered as the person who had passed, as the person who had lived, and what their accolades were in their life. We have
66 years to talk about, and we're going to be stuck on these 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, there's so much time.
Right. My mom was like, do not talk about, cancer and then like speak about how I was an incredible substance abuse counselor. And I want to talk about the impact that I made on people's lives, and, the poetry and the people that I have met across my life, because she was such a colorful person. She was friends with so many people and had a wealth of knowledge in so many different areas that I feel like it would have been kind of hard almost to have a funeral or service for her, because of all the different walks of life in so many different areas. Essentially what she wanted was when she was alive to do a celebration of life, to say goodbye. And unfortunately, she didn't get that time. What we really did was, she was cremated, and we had like these beautiful crystal orb balls that were created by artists, I think in Colorado, actually. So that was, that experience. But as far as the funeral home experience, unfortunately, it wasn't the best. And again, I am a very novice, new person with grief, and I can't really compare one to the other. So I don't really know if it's like a standard across the industry. But going into the funeral home for the first time, and I had never really been to more than one funeral before. But just talking about the cremation services with the funeral home, you walk in, it's extremely cold. It's very just A equals B equals C. This is,
here's the process.
Here's the process. This is the box we're going to use. It was kind of, shocking, especially, to me, because I really didn't know what to expect. I was in that mode of, let's just get, I want to get this done.
Were you alone, or did you go with your sisters?
I went with my sister, my oldest sister. We were just hoping to expect more of I don't even know. Now going back thinking about it, when I think about the changes that I would make, even just something as simple as like walking in and the simple question of, is this your first experience? What was the relationship to this person to you? Like, how close were you with this person? Was it like...
They didn't ask you that?
Yeah, no, it was just...
Oh my God.
They asked,
who
is it?
Right.
It's, your mother, but that could mean a mother is a lot of different things. Some people don't have relationships at all with their parents, but to get a more in-depth, viewpoint of where we were mentally. And I know that that's not really a funeral director's job to, go through and, I didn't want to counsel. Yeah,
it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, we are taught to do that.
Right.
We're taught to be compassionate and caring. And
right.
I'm just like thinking about my experience with the funeral directors I work with.
Yeah.
It's so different.
Right.
We ask probably 200 questions.
Oh, wow.
Like, we have families in there sharing extensive life stories. I mean, we just had someone the other day who passed in hospice, and they were in the office with the funeral director for almost 2 hours, and they were laughing, crying.
Yeah.
They were coming out for drinks and snacks and coffee, and it felt like, just watching that and then seeing them hug the funeral director at the end. And she's like, if you guys need anything, like, here's my cell phone number. Call me any time of the day, and we will make sure we get whatever you need to you. Here's all these resources. Here's any information. Don't worry about paying right now. We'll worry about that once everything is said and done and you guys feel mentally okay. That should be the standard.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's
beautiful.
A surprise for people if they get that sort of treatment.
That is so, so beautiful because it really is like the last stop.
Yeah.
It's
we're called the last responders.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
We're here to make sure that your loved one is in good hands. And if you don't feel like that, it's very unsettling.
Right.
It's very unsettling to think of your loved one in a cremation box waiting to go to the crematory. Right.
Exactly. That. And and just to put it like completely transparent, blunt, that's exactly what it is. And then to leave uneasy knowing that they are left there with somebody that you're alive, uncomfortable with. Obviously they've passed. It's just this weird kind of like, would they want this? Would they be comfortable? And would they be comfortable being with
this person,
with this
vibe?
Yes, exactly. Are they going to take care of, what is left of them? And
that's such a great point.
Yeah.
Like, it keeps you up at night, like knowing the cremation date. And then there's like, let's say 2 or 3 days until they go. Like,
exactly.
Are you okay with them being with that person?
Right.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I was like, no, it's just, it's probably just me. I don't, I'm just not experienced in this. I remember my sister being like, it's just like, that was a, pretty cold experience. It felt like a car dealership, like this, sign on the dotted line and here we go. And here's the things that were left in the room at the hospital. Do you want this?
Right, in the like belongings, personal items bag.
The personal items bag, which I didn't
plastic bag. It makes you feel like you're getting it handed over from a detective.
Exactly.
It's got like dates and
which I still have, and I'm like, I didn't even know I would be getting that. You'll find some morbid comic relief in this, but I mean, my sister and I literally brought a TJ Maxx bag to pick her up because she loved TJ Maxx.
Period.
So like when we got her ashes, we're like, all right, we're bringing a little flair in there. We brought like a butterfly TJ Maxx bag. We're like, all right, Mom,
you're coming
with you're coming with us because we know it's dark in there, but we're bringing again, just
I love that.
I mean, going back full circle. Well, I reached out when I saw you bringing this all to light. It's just absolutely incredible. Because I feel like just the experience for the people who are still here, this will just like bring new levels of peace.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be so cut and dry.
No.
It's 2025.
Yes.
Like seriously, why are we still acting like this?
Right.
I mean, death is, and the conversations around grief and death are becoming more and more and more normal.
Right.
People are more and more aware of what goes on.
Yes.
There's no secrets here. Just treat a family how you would treat your own family.
Exactly.
I mean,
yes.
You meet some funeral directors and you're like, are you jaded? Are you exhausted?
Yes.
Like, and they probably are.
Right.
But still, it's part of your job.
Yeah.
To be a decent human being. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I'm super lucky to work with the people I work with because I don't know if it's because everyone's like under 35 and we're all like younger and like whatever, but there are some places where everyone's, 70 years old and still doing things how they did them 50 years ago.
Right.
It's really, really tough because it's an industry that requires so much professionalism and care and understanding and kindness.
Yeah.
And I get at every job, there's stuff going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about, but that's no excuse to treat these families who are coming to you at the most vulnerable time like they're a transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you want that transaction experience, you know, that's fine. But it's almost like when you walk in, it's like have two different, like, do you want the compassionate experience?
Do you want to cut to the chase
or you want or do you want like a more like compassionate, experience where it's something that is more tangible and you have a little more feel to it, and it's this person did mean, you know, the world to you, and or do you just want to, you know, get in here and you want to get out of here as soon as possible, and this is, you know, you don't want to, and that's
people
fine.
like that,
absolutely.
And that's the thing is, as a funeral director, your job is to ask questions, so you can then read the room, and see what are these people looking for here, and how can I step in and support or not support, and just say, here's your 3 options, pick one.
Right.
Or do you need to think about this for a few days? Do you want to call me later? Like, do you want to take a few hours, go get lunch, and then come back? And after you've talked about it one-on-one with your family, we can take a week if we need to.
Right.
I definitely do. Like, it's really eye-opening to hear your perspective about this, because I know that's not the type of funeral director I want to be. I'm just really sorry that was your experience. It's so unfortunate. And as we were saying before, like, it sets your grief journey off on a very unstable foot. You're like, okay, now I'm holding all this resentment and anger and confusion towards the funeral home when I should just be focused on my mom and myself and my family.
Exactly. And you don't even know how to ask what it is that you need, because you don't even really know. You don't even know.
Here. You don't even want to be here, first of all.
Right. You don't even want to be here. So it's exactly. So to even ask for anything at that point in time and saying, I need silence. I need, you know,
to think.
Can
you leave the room for 5 minutes? So I can just I could just hyper focus and just think about what it is that, you know, I need to just, you know, take some time or have some time or call my other family, call a friend who's been through this before. Like, take a moment.
Yep. It's definitely all encompassing.
Seriously, I feel like I could talk to you actually for.
Oh my God, me too. I know. I feel like there's just so many things.
A lot of layers to death.
A trailblazer. This is just. I'm so excited in the weirdest ways.
Thank you. That means so much.
No, really, truly, I think that it's just an industry that needs to be changed. But not even for the fact that, you know, bringing light to the situation, but even more women in the industry. It's a male-dominated industry, so kudos to you for that as well.
Yeah. It's the future.
Yeah. I mean, again, kudos to you. We would have went to you first. So
thank you so much.
So amazing.
Is there anything else you want to cover today?
Oh, again, I feel like I could just be on this forever
and
ever.
This is the couch of vulnerability.
Yeah. It's like, really, I guess just that grief is different every single day. So thank you for always talking about that too. I know that you go through that and you understand that on a completely different level. And I don't know what 5 years from now holds or 10 years from now holds.
Seriously.
And
I don't know what tomorrow holds.
I don't know what an hour from now holds. But I guess to anybody listening, just to be patient with yourself and to really utilize, you know, great resources that align with the person that you are. And if something doesn't align with what you want, whether that be in the grief process, whether that be with funeral services or anything else, don't force yourself, because like you said, all of that carries lifelong, and it's a process, it's a journey. And I just, again, thank you for letting me speak about my incredible mother. She was just sensational. She was the most important person in my life, and going through parent loss is just an unbelievable experience. But also, I do have to say, it's just made me a stronger individual as a whole. She's watching. She's here.
There's a spot here for a reason. She's like,
yeah.
She's like, thanks for sharing. Oh, I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing all of this, because it's not easy to talk about for a lot of people. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this and just feel really seen. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of And Also. And a huge thank you to Faith for coming on today and for sharing such vulnerable, personal stories of her mother with me. I'm so grateful that people can come into this room and sit on this couch as complete strangers, and then they leave here with a new connection, and there's just so much friendship and vulnerability and just love and compassion that happens here. So thank you to everyone for allowing that. And thank you to all the guests for coming on and sharing all of these amazing stories. If you're listening on audio platforms such as Spotify and Apple, be sure to download this episode, send it to a friend, and rate the show 5 stars. I would love if you could give the show a rating. It means the world to me. It helps us share these stories. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. It helps just push us out into the algorithm. And yeah, make sure you subscribe. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching or listening today. And we will see you next week on Sunday for another episode of the And Also podcast. See you soon.